The moment the doctor handed me the consent form, my hands shook not from fear of the surgery, but from the realization that the woman signing it was the same one my mother had spent years calling a disgrace. Nora's eyes met mine across the sterile hospital room, and in that instant, all the secrets I'd buried for a decade came crashing back. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday in our quiet Chicago suburb, but nothing about this day felt ordinary. My phone had buzzed during a team meeting at the marketing firm downtown, the caller ID flashing, North Shore Hospital. By the time I burst through the emergency doors, my mother Evelyn was already hooked up to monitors, her face pale against the white sheets. "Blockage in the main artery," the cardiologist explained, voice clipped and urgent. "We need to operate now, or she won't make it through the night. You're next of kin, Daniela. We need a signature." I stared at the paper, the ink blurring. Evelyn Thompson, age 68. My mother who had raised me alone after Dad left. The woman whose approval had shaped every choice I ever made. But before my pen could touch the line, Nora stepped forward from the corner where she had been waiting silently. "I'll sign it," she said, her voice steady like it always was in a crisis. She took the clipboard from the nurse without hesitation, her blonde hair catching the harsh fluorescent light, as she wrote her name in that familiar neat script. "Nora Ellis. My wife." The nurses exchanged quick glances, but no one argued. Legally, everything was in order. We had made sure of that 2 years ago in a small courthouse ceremony that no one from my family knew about. Not my cousins, not my aunts, and certainly not my mother. Nora handed the form back, her fingers brushing mine for the briefest second, a touch that carried 10 years of unsaid words. "She's going to be okay," she whispered. "We've got this." But as they wheeled my mother toward the operating room, the weight of every lie I had ever told settled on my chest like concrete. 10 years ago, in a cramped dorm room at the University of Illinois, Nora had been the first person who made me feel truly alive. We met in Intro to American Literature, both of us 19 and pretending we were just there for the poetry. She sat 2 rows ahead, always doodling in the margins of her notebook, and when the professor asked for volunteers to read aloud, her voice had this soft confidence that made my stomach flip. After class one rainy afternoon, she offered me half her umbrella and a ride back to the dorms. That was it. One shared umbrella, one conversation about Sylvia Plath, and suddenly the world felt different. We fell in love the way people do when they're young and reckless, stealing kisses in the library stacks, driving to the lake at midnight just to talk until sunrise. She taught me how to make perfect pancakes and how to stand up for myself without yelling. I taught her how to pronounce my grandmother's Italian recipes and how to laugh at my terrible knock-knock jokes. For 8 months, it was perfect. Until my mother decided to surprise me with a campus visit during Parents' Weekend. I can still see the exact moment everything shattered. Evelyn walked into the Student Union Cafe where Nora and I were sitting too close, her hand resting on mine under the table. My mother's smile froze. "Daniela, who's this?" she asked, voice sweet but eyes sharp. I pulled my hand away so fast the coffee spilled. "Just a friend, Mom. Nora. We studied together." The lie tasted like ash even then. That night in my dorm, after my mother left for her hotel, Nora looked at me with those blue eyes full of hurt. "You don't have to hide us, Danny." Not from her. But I did. Because the next morning Evelyn sat me down and said the words that still echoed in my nightmares. "I didn't raise you to embarrass me like this. People will talk. Our church, our neighbors. This isn't you. Fix it." So I did. I told Nora it was over. I said it was just a phase, that my family would never accept it, that I couldn't lose my mother. She cried, but she didn't beg. She just packed her things and transferred to another college the next semester. I dated Mark for 2 years after that, a nice guy from accounting whom my mother adored. I smiled at family dinners and pretended the emptiness wasn't eating me alive. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nora's face the day I broke her heart. The waiting room clock ticked past midnight now, pulling me back to the present. Nora sat beside me, our shoulders almost touching but not quite. "You don't have to do this alone anymore," she said quietly. I wanted to believe her. But as the surgeon came out with updates, I knew the real surgery wasn't just on my mother's heart. It was on everything I had spent years trying to bury. The surgeon's words hung in the air like smoke. "The procedure went well. She's stable, but it'll be a few hours before she wakes. You should both get some rest. Both? He said it so casually, as if the whole hospital already understood what Nora and I were to each other. I nodded numbly, but my mind was already spinning back to the summer after college, the summer I almost lost myself completely trying to be the daughter my mother wanted. After Nora left campus, I threw myself into being perfect. Straight A's, volunteer work at the church, Sunday brunches with Evelyn where we talked about my future like it was a checklist. Mark proposed on a Friday night at the same lake where Nora and I used to park. I said yes because it was easier than explaining why I couldn't sleep without crying. The engagement party was at my mother's house, all white tablecloths and forced smiles. Finally doing something right, she whispered in my ear while hugging me. I smiled until my cheeks hurt. But 6 months later, I ran into Nora at a downtown Chicago job fair. She was there recruiting for a nonprofit, looking exactly the same yet completely different, confident in a way that made my knees weak. We talked for 3 hours in the hotel lobby, pretending it was just catching up. By the end of the night, we were holding hands again like no time had passed. I never stopped loving you, she told me in the parking lot, rain soaking us both. But I won't be your secret again, Danny. Not ever. I chose her anyway. We moved in together quietly, got married on a random Thursday because why wait when you've already lost 10 years? My mother never knew. I told her I was renting with a roommate, that work kept me too busy for dating. The lies piled up like unpaid bills. Every holiday I split between two worlds. One where I was Evelyn's perfect daughter, and one where Nora made me coffee exactly the way I liked it, and kissed me good morning like it was the most natural thing in the world. Now, in the dim hospital hallway, those two worlds were colliding. My phone buzzed with texts from relatives. Aunt Linda. How is she? Need anything? Cousin Mike. On my way from Peoria. I hadn't told any of them about Nora. How could I? The last time the family had even mentioned anything close to this topic was at Thanksgiving 3 years ago, when my uncle made a joke about those people, and my mother laughed along. I had stayed silent, hating myself the whole time. Nora squeezed my hand. They'll find out eventually. Maybe this is how it starts. Her voice was calm, but I saw the tension in her jaw. She had every reason to walk away. I had chosen my mother over her once. Why would she trust me not to do it again? The double door swung open and my Aunt Linda rushed in, eyes red from crying. She stopped short when she saw Nora. Who's this? She asked, looking between us. I froze. Nora stood up slowly. I'm Nora, Daniela's wife. The word landed like a stone in still water. Linda's mouth opened, closed. Wife, she repeated, voice rising. Evelyn never said anything about. She didn't know. I cut in, the confession tasting like blood. No one did. Linda backed up a step, hand to her chest like I'd slapped her. Daniela, what have you done? Your mother is fighting for her life and you spring this on us now. The waiting room suddenly felt too small, too bright. Other families glanced over, whispers starting like wildfire. Nora stayed beside me, shoulders straight, but I could feel the old wound reopening between us. Hours later, while we waited for Evelyn to wake, the flashbacks kept coming in waves. I remembered the night after I had told Nora it was over back in college. I sat on the dorm floor alone, staring at the photo of us at the lake, and cried until my eyes swelled shut. My mother called the next day. I heard you did the right thing, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. Proud. The word had felt like a knife then, and it still did now. A nurse finally led us into the recovery room. Evelyn's eyes fluttered open, confused and weak. She saw me first. Danny. What happened? Then her gaze shifted to Nora standing on the other side of the bed. Recognition hit like a truck. You, she whispered, voice hoarse from the tube. What is she doing here? You, my mother repeated, her voice cracking but sharp enough to cut glass. Nora didn't flinch. She simply adjusted the blanket over Evelyn's legs with the same gentle care she had shown me 1,000 times. I'm here because Daniela needed someone. And because I love your daughter, she said quietly. The monitors beeped faster. Evelyn tried to sit up, but the pain pinned her down. Love, after what you did to my family, you turned her against me. I stepped between them, heart hammering. Mom, stop. Nora didn't turn me against anyone. I was already me. I just stopped pretending. The words tumbled out before I could stop them, 10 years of silence breaking all at once. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't soft. They were angry, betrayed. I raised you better than this. The church, the neighbors, everyone will talk. You made me look like a fool. Her hand trembled as she reached for the call button. Get her out of my room. Nora touched my shoulder. It's okay. I'll wait outside. She left without another word. But the door closing behind her felt like a finality I couldn't bear. I turned back to my mother. You almost died tonight. And the person who made sure you didn't was the woman you spent years hating. Doesn't that mean something? Evelyn looked away, jaw tight. It means you lied to me for years. How long has this been going on? I told her everything then, the words spilling out in a rush. The college romance, the breakup that nearly destroyed me, the fake engagement to Mark, the reunion, the secret marriage. With every detail, her face grew paler, but the anger never left. You chose her over your own blood, she whispered when I finished. I don't know who you are anymore. The next few hours blurred into a storm of family arrivals. Aunt Linda pulled me into the hallway, voice low and furious. People are already texting the prayer chain. Daniela's living in sin, they say. How could you do this to your mother on her deathbed? Cousin Mike just shook his head, refusing to look at Nora when she returned with coffee for everyone. The judgment was thick, suffocating, exactly like my mother had warned me it would be all those years ago. But something shifted inside me while I watched Nora quietly handle the paperwork, talk to the doctors, and even bring my mother fresh iced chips when the nurses were busy. She didn't have to be here. She could have let me drown in guilt alone. Instead she stayed, her presence a quiet anchor in the chaos. I remembered the night we got married, just the two of us and a tired judge. Nora had slipped the simple gold band on my finger and said, "No more hiding. Ever." I had believed her then. I needed to believe her now. By morning, Evelyn was stable enough to sit up. She hadn't spoken to me since the outburst, but when the social worker came in to discuss discharge plans, my mother surprised everyone. My daughter and her wife will handle it, she said, the word wife sounding forced but present. Nora met my eyes across the room, and for the first time in days, I saw hope flicker there. Discharge day arrived faster than anyone expected. Evelyn's recovery was nothing short of a miracle, the doctors said, but I knew the real miracle was happening in the silences between us. Nora had spent every night at the hospital, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair so I could take the cot. She brought Evelyn's favorite vanilla pudding from the cafeteria, fluffed her pillows without being asked, and never once rose to the bait when my mother made passive comments about lifestyle choices. On the drive home to my mother's house, the three of us crammed into my car. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Evelyn stared out the window at the passing suburbs, the same streets where she had raised me on church potlucks and PTA meetings. The neighbors will see, she muttered finally. They'll ask questions. I gripped the wheel tighter. Let them ask. I'm done lying, Mom. Nora reached over from the passenger seat and squeezed my knee, a small gesture that said everything words couldn't. The first confrontation came that evening. Aunt Linda showed up unannounced with a casserole and a sermon. Evelyn, honey, we need to talk about this situation. She glared at Nora, who was quietly setting the table like she belonged there, which she did. My mother surprised me again. Linda, I'm tired. Daniela and Nora are staying to help me recover. That's final. Linda left in a huff, but the damage was done. By morning, the church group text was blowing up my phone with prayers that felt more like condemnation. I escaped to the backyard with Nora after dinner. The old swing set from my childhood creaked under our weight as we sat side by side. I was so scared back then, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Scared of losing her. Scared of what people would say. I hurt you so badly because I was weak. Nora turned to me, the sunset catching the gold in her hair. You were 19, Danny. We both were. But we're not those girls anymore. She kissed me then, soft and sure, right there where anyone could see. For the first time, I didn't pull away. Inside, my mother watched from the window. I expected anger when we came back in, but she only said, "The guest room is made up. For both of you." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a door cracking open. The real storm hit 3 days later at the neighborhood welcome home gathering my aunts insisted on throwing. 20 relatives crowded the living room. All smiles until they saw Nora beside me. Whispers turned to outright questions. "So you're the one who corrupted her?" Uncle Frank asked loudly enough for everyone to hear. I stepped forward, heart racing. No one corrupted anyone. I love Nora. She's my wife, and she's the reason Mom is still here. If that's a problem, the door is right there. The room went silent. My mother, still weak but sitting tall in her recliner, cleared her throat. "Frank, enough. Daniela is my daughter. And Nora." She paused, looking at us both for the first time without venom. "Nora signed the papers that saved my life. I may not understand it, but I'm not blind." It wasn't a full acceptance, but coming from Evelyn Thompson, it was revolutionary. The weeks that followed felt like walking through a minefield of healing. Every day brought a new layer of the past to the surface. Mornings were for physical therapy with my mother, afternoons for quiet talks where she asked questions I never thought she'd voice. "When did you know?" she asked one rainy Tuesday while Nora was at work. I told her about the first time Nora held my hand in that literature class, how the world suddenly made sense. Evelyn listened without interrupting, though her hands twisted the blanket in her lap. Nora and I fell into a rhythm at the house, cooking meals together, helping with laundry, stealing moments in the kitchen when my mother napped. One night after a particularly hard physical therapy session, Evelyn broke down crying in my arms. "I thought I was protecting you," she sobbed. "From the gossip, from the pain I saw in other families. But I was the one causing the pain." I held her until she fell asleep. The guilt I had carried for years finally cracking open. The community didn't make it easy. Church friends stopped by with casseroles and thinly veiled lectures. The local paper even ran a small piece about local family drama, after someone leaked the story. But Nora faced it all with the same quiet strength that had drawn me to her in college. She organized a fundraiser for the hospital's cardiac unit, turning the gossip into something positive. "They can talk," she told me one evening while we folded laundry. "But they can't take away what we built." Flashbacks still came at night. I would wake remembering the day I broke up with Nora in the campus parking lot, the way her voice had cracked when she said, "I hope she was worth it." Worth it. My mother's approval had cost me the love of my life, and I had paid in full. But now, watching Nora help my mother walk to the mailbox each morning, I understood redemption wasn't a single moment. It was 1,000 small choices to show up. A turning point came during a family dinner 2 months after the surgery. My cousins were there, still awkward but trying. Halfway through the meal, my mother raised her glass. "To second chances," she said, looking directly at Nora. "And to the woman who signed the papers when I needed her most." Nora's eyes glistened. I reached for her hand under the table, and this time everyone saw. No one looked away. The last piece fell into place on a crisp autumn morning exactly 6 months after that terrifying night in the hospital. My mother had insisted on hosting a small backyard barbecue, just close family and a few neighbors who had stopped whispering. Nora and I arrived early to help set up. Evelyn was stronger now, moving around the kitchen with only a slight limp, directing us like the general she had always been. As the guests mingled, I pulled my mother aside near the old rose bushes she loved. "Mom, I need to say something. I'm sorry for the lies. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't know your own daughter. But I'm not sorry for loving Nora." Evelyn studied me for a long moment, then reached up to touch my cheek. "I know. And I'm sorry too, for making you choose. A mother shouldn't do that." She glanced across the yard where Nora was laughing with my cousin Mike, the tension between them finally gone. "She's good for you. I see that now." Later, as the sun set and string lights flickered on, Nora and I slow danced to an old song playing from the speaker. My mother watched from her chair, a small smile on her face. The journey hadn't been pretty. There had been tears, slammed doors, and nights when I wondered if the damage was too deep. But standing there in Nora's arms, with my mother's blessing hovering like a fragile piece, I understood that love wasn't about never breaking. It was about choosing to put the pieces back together stronger. The community still had its opinions, and some relatives kept their distance, but the ones who mattered stayed. And most importantly, I finally stayed true to myself. No more hiding. No more denial. True or false? Denying your true self to protect family honor is ever worth the pain it causes?